Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1221B, and today's date is March 6, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Deep State Has Just Been Set Up. Get ready for the awakening. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, it looks like Trump decided to revise his executive order, and he released his executive order on banning citizens from nations from traveling to the United States, but removing Iraq from the list after his controversial first attempt was blocked in the courts. Now, the new order, which the White House said Trump had signed, keeps a 90-day ban on travel to the United States by citizens of Iran, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. And they left out Iraq. Now, this is going to take effect on the 16th, and this way they have a short period of time to get everything in order. Now, Iraq was taken off the ban list because the Iraqi government has imposed new vetting procedures, such as heightened visa screening and data sharing, and because of its work with the United States in countering the Islamic State, well, they decided to leave Iraq off the list. Now, this is still just 90 days. It's temporary, and we can see right now that this is going to go in effect as of March 16th. Now, over the weekend, we talked about how Obama, well, he tried to get a wiretap order, and it looks like he tried it 3 different times, and the last time he was able to get it, and he bugged Trump's building. Now, the mainstream media, well, they're all in an uproar over Trump's claim that Obama personally ordered the phones in Trump's tower to be wiretapped right before the election. But no one really should be surprised that the government was listening to Trump's phone calls, because as we know, the government, through the NSA, have been listening to everyone's phone calls. This is not a surprise. We knew this was happening. This is why they discontinued the Patriot Act and went with the USA Freedom Act to allow companies to spy on people. But they've been spying on people all along. We understand that Clapper completely lied to the American public when he said that he was not spying on the American people, and it turns out that he really was. And if we look at what they've been doing, they've been spying on other leaders too. Angela Merkel, Hollande, and others. But the American people, I don't think they really realized how the government was infiltrating all the electronic devices to hear what was going on, where they would intercept computers and install a special chip, where they have certain software placed into phones so they can just turn on your camera, they can just turn on your microphone so they can listen to what you're saying. And all this information was being collected. Now, we see that the mainstream media is out there and they are reeling from all of this. They can't even handle what is going on. Now, radio host Mark Levin, he initially broke the story earlier in the week. Levin, well, he really wasn't a diehard supporter of Trump during the campaign season. As a constitutional attorney, the radio host is often found making well-documented arguments on a show against Trump, not for him. And he said that 6 federal agencies were involved, including the FBI, CIA, NSA, DOJ, Treasury Department, and the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and the Director of National Intelligence. He said the evidence is overwhelming. This is not about President Trump's tweeting. This is about Obama's spying. And the question isn't whether it's spied. We know they went to Pfizer court twice. It's the extent of the spying. That is the Trump campaign, the Trump transition, the Trump surrogates. And we can see right now that Trump does have certain evidence that shows that, yes, this was ordered. Now, we need to understand that Obama has done this before. This is not the first time. And if we look at some of the wiretap victims, we can see that this was done very often. We see the U.S. National Security Agency bugged a private climate change strategy meeting between the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin. Obama bugged Chief of Staff of UN High Commissioner for Refugees for long-term interception targeting his Swiss phone. Obama singled out the director of the Rules Division of the World Trade Organization. Obama intercepted top EU and Japanese trade ministers discussing their secret strategy and red lines to stop the U.S. extorting them at the World Trade Organization. Obama explicitly targeted 5 other top EU economic officials for long-term interception. He targeted the phones of Italy's ambassador to NATO and other top Italian officials. Obama intercepted details of critical private meeting between the French President Nicolas Sarkozy, Merkel, and others. Obama also targeted Cheryl Atkinson in 2014. She said her personal computer, her CBS laptop were hacked after she began filing stories about Benghazi that were unflattering to the Obama administration. WikiLeaks tweeted overnight that the Obama administration spied on their journalist as well, and they have the documentation to show you. The New York Times even put out an article, "Wiretap Data Used in Inquiry of Trump Aides." So what we're seeing right now is that, yeah, he orders wiretaps. Now, what's very interesting, before the election, and when the first FISA request came in, it was right after Attorney General Loretta Lynch met with Bill Clinton on the tarmac at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport in June of 2016. The second FISA request was submitted in October of 2016, just before the elections. Hillary Clinton sent out a tweet on October 31st stating that computer scientists have uncovered a covert server linking the Trump organization to a Russian-based server. It appears she was tipped off to the wiretapping prior to the election. And we could see from her tweet that she did say this. Now, this was well-coordinated attack on the presidential on Trump. Attorney General Lynch met with Bill Clinton just before the first FISA request. After that, they were successful with the second FISA request in October, and it passed it on to Hillary, hoping that this would help them win the election. Now, when we start to put all of this together, we can see what Trump's strategy is. Because, number one, there was this whole thing about Russia, how Jeff Sessions was dealing with the Russian ambassador, how he lied when he was being questioned, how Trump has connections to Russia, and they kept bringing that up. Well, he used this wiretap story, and it shifted the narrative completely. That's number one. He also declared war on the American intelligence agencies. He's bringing this out into the open. He doesn't want it to be investigated behind closed doors and be classified so you can't see anything. It doesn't look like that's his plan. He wants this to be an open forum where everyone can see what's going on. Because think about it. Trump wants the Congress to investigate the wiretapping, because if Trump himself investigates it, it will be undercover and classified. What Trump wants is open public hearings where he can release the FISA warrants, plus the daily briefings of then President Obama with Comey, Loretta Lynch, and all their conniving and colluding for all to see. Trump wants to try Obama and the rest in the court of public opinion with their own words, not through anonymous sources and leaks and all this stuff. He's bringing this out into the open. That is his major plan right now. Now, on February 28th, President Trump signed the repeal of Obama's Social Security gun ban. On March 2nd, Self magazine and other corporate media publications reported that Trump had ended firearm background checks for persons who were severely mentally ill. This is completely fake, phony, and false. And the mainstream media outlets were out there pushing their agenda once again. For example, On March 2nd, NBC News reported that Trump ended firearm gun checks for people with mental illness. And during the process of repealing of the ban, the New York Times, New York Daily News, the Huffington Post, well, they all reported the same thing as Self magazine. Now, according to Self, President Trump signed a bill into law Tuesday nullifying a regulation that made it more difficult for people with severe mental illness to purchase guns. The regulation, which was issued by the Social Security Administration and finalized in December of 2016, added people who receive Social Security money for mental illness and those who have been deemed unable to handle their own financial affairs to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Now, what Self did not report is that mental illness is a blanket statement that covers a myriad of different illnesses, and many of which never result in danger to oneself or to others, but all of which are treated the same under the Social Security gun ban. Trump and Republican lawmakers recognize the danger posed by the ban, that it threatens Second Amendment rights and due process. The White House also expressed concern that the ban would jeopardize Second Amendment rights for persons with disabilities. And we knew when Obama was doing this, they were trying to remove the weapons from everyday people. And there's different classifications of illness. And of course, they were just blanket statement on everything saying, yes, all of these people cannot have a weapon, which is absolutely ridiculous. What's very interesting about all of this with the corporate media and the deep state is they skip over everything that they wanted done, that benefited them, that helped their cause, and they report on everything else that they don't have proof on. And they use a lot of propaganda. I mean, think about all the bombshells that came out that the alternative media was reporting on. How about when Hillary Clinton approved the transfer of 20% of U.S. uranium to Russia, and 9 investors in the deal funneled $145 million to the Clinton Foundation? Not a peep. Bill Clinton bagged $500,000 for a Moscow speech paid for by the Kremlin-backed bank while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Well, didn't he have dealings with Russia? Hillary Clinton hid $2.35 million in secret donations from Ian Tefler, the head of Russia's uranium company. So when we start to put all of this together, what do we see? Well, the corporate media really doesn't report on anything. They try to distract. They report on ridiculous stories. They make propaganda up to change the narrative and point you in the wrong direction. They report on emotions. And we can see from the wiretapping that Obama did to different news agencies to keep them in check, to make sure they weren't mentioning things they didn't want to be mentioned, and from other things and other dealings that were going on, we see right now that the whole thing is going to start to fall apart. Because what's happening at this point, there is an awakening where people are looking and saying, wait a minute, something is going on here. And as more of this is put out into the open, where people can actually peer in and look and say, wait a minute, what is going on here? What is this documentation? Yes, there is proof. And let the public hear all of it. Well, this is huge. Now, is the deep state going to allow this to happen? Are they just going to sit back and say, okay, you know what? You caught us. We're sorry. No, they're going to fight back. This is just the beginning. We've just started March. And look how chaotic it is already. As we move forward, this is going to build up tremendously. And it's going to get worse and worse. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they get so desperate, I'm talking about the deep state, that they actually take a shot at Trump to scare him. And if that doesn't do it, they will assassinate him as the last option. Now, Judicial Watch is out there. They announced today that they're going to be filing the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the Central Intelligence Agency, the United States Department of Justice, and the Department of Treasury regarding records related to the investigation of United States Army Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, his communications with Russia Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. And they want all the records. They want the conversations. They want to know what was really said, what was going on. And the request includes, but is not limited to, any and all related warrants, affidavits, declarations, or similar records regarding the aforementioned investigation for purposes of clarification. And they put in there, please find the enclosed CNN report regarding the investigation, which cites information that was provided to CNN by members of the intelligence community. Now, Judicial Watch asked the court to order the agencies to search for all records responsive to its Freedom of Information request and demonstrate that they employed reasonable search methods. And we can see right now that we'll have to see how this goes, because most of the time they don't get the information they want. Now, in past reports, we talk about political correctness and how the establishment, the deep state, they're trying to actually divert us into words they want us to use. They're trying to control the speech. And this is how it starts. They tell you, well, this word is no good. You have to say this word. Oh, you can't say that word. And that's not freedom of speech. That is tricking you into thinking that you do have freedom of speech, but they're actually controlling what you say. Now, out in England, we see Cardiff Metropolitan University. Well, they're at the forefront of political correctness sensitivity. And the university bans lecturers from using any of these insensitive words. And they actually give a list. Like when they say the best man for the job, they have to say best person for the job. If you say waitress, you have to say server. Chairman, you have to say chair. Fireman, you have to say firefighter. Forefathers, you have to say ancestors. And they tell the people, please try to avoid words like mother and father unless you can say mother and father together, because having it separate, it upsets people. According to the guide, Mrs. and Miss are considered offensive. Clearly, it's best to avoid gender-identifying terms altogether. And you can see what is happening right here. They are trying to basically control what people are saying. And this is how it begins. It starts off just like this, and they continue on. And before you know it, you don't have any type of freedom of speech. You have to abide by what they're telling you to say. Actually, if you watch the movie or read the book, The Giver, actually this is what they do. It's precision of language, telling you what you can and cannot say. This is exactly what is happening here, and they call it political correctness. It's really controlling what you say. And again, once you start to control, you no longer have freedom of speech. Now, Hollande is out there. This is the president of France. He's saying that it is his ultimate duty to prevent Marine Le Pen from winning the election. That's his job right now as the president of France, to stop Marine Le Pen. Now, what he's really saying is that the deep state, the establishment, not just here in the United States, but in many other countries, their job is to stop all those who are going to take away their power. They want people who are going to work with the establishment, work with the deep state. Those people who are against it, they cannot be allowed in. That's what they're really saying. Now, North Korea, they ordered the expulsion of Malaysian ambassador in 48 hours, labeling him persona non grata and telling him to leave North Korea because of what happened in the airport in Malaysia with his half-brother. Now, North Korea, they have fired 4 missiles. Now, of course, South Korea saying they're ballistic missiles, they can carry nuclear warheads, run for the hills. And we're getting information from the U.S. military saying that no, they really weren't intercontinental ballistic missiles that they fired. They're just missiles. And countries do this all the time. It's just that the corporate media likes to really grab onto this, push the agenda, scare people, and they're trying to push Trump, his administration, into some type of conflict with North Korea. The same thing that goes with Iran. They have fired 2 different missile systems, and they're out there pushing that story, and of course, they're testing it. It's right off of their country, just like the United States fired a missile out into the Pacific to the Marshall Islands heading towards China. Well, I mean, should China be sitting here going, oh my God, they're getting ready to attack? Well, no, that was a test. Now, we know the United States was trying to provoke and push China. That was the whole purpose of it. But we can see these other countries, they're testing their equipment because they know what's coming. They know that the establishment wants a war with these countries. All these countries that do not have or are not working with a private Western central bank that is hooked in to the private Western central banks of Europe, the United States, and the top biz central bank, guess what? They are going to war with those countries. We see out in Yemen, Saudi Arabia and the French are illegally siphoning 63% of Yemen's oil. Now, millions of Yemenis, they're suffering from food shortages, from disease, from war that the United States government and the coalition forces have been pushing in this country. And we can see they're doing the same thing that they did in Syria. They are siphoning off the oil. And again, this is what it's all about. Now, a lot of people think, well, there's not that much oil in Yemen. They're a small energy producer. Well, the truth of the matter is, the country is sitting on a substantial oil and gas reserves. Why do you think they want this country? Why do you think the United States had Saudi Arabia invade Yemen when Yemen didn't do anything to Saudi Arabia? Because they don't want the Houthis taking control of the country, which means they can't get their hands on the millions and millions and millions of oil and gas reserves in that country. This is what they are doing there. Because the whole point of getting Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Syria, and then Iran is to control the oil, to keep the dollar on the oil. This is what keeps the system going. And what we see right now is things are breaking down rapidly. And as they continue to break down all the dollars that are in reserve in all these countries that are buying oil from these countries, well, if they start selling the oil, not using the dollar, they're going to be coming back to the United States, which then we will see inflation. This is another piece into the puzzle of the economic collapse. We see that the Syrian government forces, they have taken over positions from the U.S.-backed militia in control of the city of Manbij. Remember, we talked about how Russia made a deal with the Kurds that they would hand over the different areas to the Syrian government. Well, this is being done right now. While Turkey and the United States were arguing, Russia stepped in, made a deal, and these parts are being handed over. And we can see right now, they're ruining the plans for the United States government central bankers, the deep state, the establishment that wanted Assad out. They wanted to get into Iran. They wanted to build an oil pipeline through the country and place a puppet government in the country. It is falling apart. We see satellite visuals. Well, in Raqqa, we see that the United States has set up a military base containing a helipad. And the pad can be used for multiple kinds of warcraft. I mean, we're seeing a Boeing CH-4 Chinook. We're seeing a Bell Boeing V-22 Osprey, an AH-64 Apache, all here at the base. Now remember, the United States government central bankers, they were not invited into the country. They were not invited in. They didn't say, Syria didn't say to the United States, come on in, help us fight the terrorists. The United States invaded this country and said to the Syrian government, we're going to fight terrorism, which is against international law. Russia was invited in. And then the United States started to build bases all around the country because their plan was to separate Syria if they couldn't remove Assad. And we can see at this point, they're still pushing ahead with their agenda. So far, nothing has changed. Certain things that Trump has done have changed, where they stopped the inflow of funds coming into the moderate rebels, but we can see their plans are still there. They're still pushing the agenda. And we know at this point, the deep state, they're going to be pushing their agenda. As we move throughout this year, things are going to escalate things are going to get more chaotic, and they're going to become very, very desperate. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.